In 2008, the film Substitution, with Angelina Jolie in the title role, was released. Few people know that the mysterious plot of this picture is based on real events. From 1926 to 1928, Los Angeles County was rocked by a series of kidnappings and murders of young boys. One of them was Walter Collins, the one about whom the film Substitution was made much later. There was a much more shocking story behind the boy's disappearance. On March 10, 1928, 9-year-old Walter Collins really wanted to go to the movies. His mother, Christine Collins, raised her son alone, so she let her son go for a couple of hours to work quietly. 2 hours passed, then 3, 4, and the boy still did not return. The mother's heart felt something was wrong. Kristen went to the police the same day. The child was missing. The police were quite skeptical about the boy's disappearance. Kristen's husband, Gordon, served time in prison and had many enemies there because he informed the police about suspicious conversations of fellow inmates. That is why the police decided that the boy was abducted by detractors who wanted to take revenge on Gordon Collins. Kristen herself, seeing the disinterest of the police, could not sit still. She gathered caring neighbors, and they walked around the city together and looked for Walter. The unwillingness of the law enforcement officers to act angered the public, and soon this story was leaked to the media. Under enormous pressure, the Los Angeles Police Department finally opened a case and sent the best employees to him. 2 months of searching passed, and instead of finding the missing child, the police missed 2 more boys. They were also abducted. In August 1928, the Illinois police detained a thin young man on the street who introduced himself to them as Walter Collins. He was dirty, his cheeks sunken from constant malnutrition. The boy said that then in March an unknown man, who called himself his real father, asked him to go with him, and then kidnapped him and took him to another state. The story was very brief and had no details. The Illinois police urgently contacted their colleagues from Los Angeles, and later Walter was sent home by train. Given the tarnished authority of the California police, it was important for them to return the boy to his mother as soon as possible and get public approval. It was a real miracle. Walter Collins was found alive, and well after 5 months of searching. But the miracle was short-lived. The police made a real show of the reunion of mother and son. All the existing newspapers were invited. It was national news. The Los Angeles police reveled in the victory, because after years of distrust of citizens, they finally regained their former authority. When Kristen finally saw the boy, she froze. It wasn't her son standing in front of her. Under the intrusive gazes of journalists, Kristen hugged the child and got into a police car with him. But later she told the police captain that this was not her child. To which the captain replied to her, "A lot of time has passed, Walter has changed, and her memory could be distorted in 6 months." He advised her to live with the boy and test him. Kristen took the boy to her home. Christine Collins was sure that an imposter was living with her. For 3 weeks, she collected evidence of this. The unhappy mother dreamed that the case would be resumed. All this time, Walter behaved disgustingly. He was different from Kristen's real son in everything. He was rude, loud, and ill-mannered. Kristen was forced to take care of a child, because of which the search for her own son was stopped. After 3 weeks, Madame Collins returned to the police. She armed herself with evidence, one of which was a cast of her son's teeth, as well as a list of testimonies from people who also believed that the boy found was not who he claimed to be. It was impossible to convince Captain Jones. The truth threatened him with huge problems, up to dismissal. He called Kristen a heartless woman, saying that she started all this in order to receive payments from the state. Deciding to bend Kristen to his will, Captain Jones forcibly sent the woman to a psychiatric hospital. Kristen was there for 5 days. It was a living hell. But violence and bullying did not break her spirit. The Illinois boy had to report to the police station every day for questioning, in case he remembered something else about his abductor. It was difficult for the boy to answer all the questions, and in the end he admitted that he was not Walter Collins. The imposter turned out to be 12-year-old Arthur Hutchins, Jr., who ran away from home in Iowa. According to the boy, after the death of his own mother, his father married an evil woman who beat him. For several months, the kid was interrupted by casual earnings and hitchhiked between the states. Once, at a gas station in Illinois, he was approached by a man who said that Arthur looked very much like Walter Collins, who disappeared from Los Angeles. Arthur quickly jumped at the opportunity to see Hollywood and staged a whole show, posing as a policeman by the same Walter. During the interrogation, he admitted that Kristen was kind to him and that he really enjoyed living in the role of someone who he was not. In the end, his stepmother picked him up and took him home to Iowa. In September 1928, the case of the missing Walter Collins was continued. A Canadian woman named Sanford Clark contacted the U.S. authorities and reported that her son, 15-year-old Sanford Clark, was being forcibly detained on a farm in California by Gordon Northcott, her own brother. Gordon Stewart Northcott was born on November 9, 1906 in Canada. His mother, Louise Northcott, did not want this pregnancy and considered it a curse. The woman did not care about the fetus. She smoked, drank, and tried in every possible way to get rid of it. However, when her son was born, Louise changed her complete renunciation to obsession. She did not let her son out of her hands, not allowing anyone to touch him. She slept in the same bed with him, washed in the bathroom. The boy was allowed everything. If he wanted to wear beautiful dresses, then he immediately got them. "I wanted an expensive toy, please." Louise did everything for her son, even if it was to the detriment. At 18, Gordon moved to California with his parents. There he had a best friend, Claude. Gordon spent a lot of time visiting Claude, and then realized that he had feelings for his 8-year-old brother Philip. He molested the boy, covering it all with games. Soon the kid began to be frightened by such entertainments, and he told his parents about everything. In 1925, Philip's parents filed a police report, and Gordon was forbidden to approach the boy closer than 200 meters. Gordon took it as a separation from a loved one. Northcott was despised by all the neighbors. He lost all his friends. In search of solitude, the guy decided to build a ranch in which he could live without the judgmental looks of outsiders. Soon Gordon acquired a decent piece of land and 3 acres near the town of Wineville. Northcott built a house, several chicken coops, and engaged in poultry breeding. The guy's parents were glad that their son took up a useful craft and abandoned the dark past. At the age of 19, Gordon began to build his ranch, and his 13-year-old nephew, Sanford Clark, was appointed to help him. Gordon persuaded his sister to leave Sanford on the ranch under the pretext of a shortage of workers, and Winifred, unfortunately, agreed, releasing her son from Canada to California. After Sanford finally settled on his uncle's farm, Gordon's behavior changed dramatically. He began to allow insults to his nephew, forced him to work 15 hours a day, and then began to beat him at all. The physical violence worsened, and then turned into sexual violence. The boy often lost consciousness, and Gordon only reveled in the weakness of his victim. This nightmare lasted for 2 years. Sanford was so intimidated that he could not even think about telling someone about his trouble. Sanford often received letters from his family, but he answered them strictly at his uncle's dictation, telling how everything was fine with him. Sanford's own sister Jessie Clark decided to visit Wineville. She was confused by the tone of the letters. Besides, she wanted to check on her brother. Upon arrival at the ranch to relatives, the girl became even more worried. Gordon's behavior seemed suspicious to her, and Sanford was not himself. One night he sneaked into his sister's bedroom and told her about the monstrous things happening in the Northcott house. The boy said that his uncle beat him and molested him, and also forced him to participate in the murder of several children under threat of death. Jessie was at a loss. She decided that the right and safest solution for her would be to return to Canada and contact the authorities. The girl contacted the American consul and asked to return her brother home. He in turn notified the Los Angeles Police Department. Immigration officers took care of the teenager. On August 31, 1928, they arrived at the ranch and took Sanford away under the pretext that the boy had been illegally transported across the border. Gordon, who noticed the approach of the police from a distance, ordered his nephew to chat up the cops. He managed to escape. Along with Gordon, his mother also disappeared. During the interrogation, Sanford told the whole story of his stay at the ranch. As it turned out, a year after the systematic rapes and beatings, Gordon abruptly lost interest in his teenage nephew. He was interested in a younger boy. The first victim, besides Sanford, was a 7-year-old Mexican boy whom Gordon abducted on his way home. Northcott tricked the boy into a car, raped and dismembered him, and later forced his nephew to bury him. In March 1928, Northcott kidnapped the same Walter Collins. It turned out that he had noticed a beautiful boy even before moving to the ranch. For several months he hatched a plan to kidnap Walter. Gordon Northcott lured Walter Collins to the ranch under the pretext of watching chickens. Gordon almost immediately attacked the boy and dragged him into the chicken coop, where he locked him up. 13-year-old Sanford heard the boy crying and calling for help all night, but was too intimidated to take any action. Walter was abused for several weeks, and then something happened that could have saved Walter. His mother Louise came to visit Gordon at the farm. She couldn't find him in the house and asked Sanford where he was. Sanford silently pointed to the chicken coop in the hope that now the woman would find out the whole truth and save him and little Walter. Opening the door, the woman found her son raping the unfortunate child. Louise ran out of there, screaming and crying. Gordon ran out after her. He grabbed her hands and sobbed like a child, swearing that this would not happen again. Gordon promised that he would return the boy to his birth mother today. But then Louise became alarmed. The woman was against the return of the child. She believed that it would take her son away from her. She didn't want the dirty secrets of her beloved Gordon to come out, and therefore decided to get rid of Walter Collins. Gordon was happy, and Sanford was shocked that his grandmother was capable of such a thing. Mother and son killed little Walter in cold blood, and Sanford was forced to bury his body so that he, too, was involved in the murder and could not escape. Despite the promise given to the mother, about 15 more boys were subjected to similar horrors. Norcott, having completely lost his fear, abducted children directly from the streets, later raping and killing them. Gordon and Louise Northcott were detained already in Canada. They'd managed to get to the city of Vernon in British Columbia. Mother and son were arrested on September 20, 1928. Northcott confessed to killing more than 5 boys. However, after being extradited to California from Canada, they both retracted their initial statements. Louise tried to take all the blame on herself. The woman would not have been sentenced to death. Northcott was suspected of killing 20 boys, but only 3 could be proved. During the proceedings, it also became clear that the mother was aware of her son's pedophile tendencies. Gordon fired all his lawyers, considering them fools. The man began to defend himself, but this, to his surprise, did not lead to success. He admitted that he mistreated the boys because he loved them. He believed that this was the only way to express his love, because his father always beat him. The judges, of course, did not believe Northcott, because he clearly wanted to justify himself by making up stories about a difficult childhood. On February 8, 1929, Gordon Northcott was sentenced to death by hanging, and his mother, Louise Northcott, was sentenced to life imprisonment, but released after 14 years. Kristen Collins refused to believe that her son died on a ranch in Wineville, because the police had already deceived her more than once. She was fighting with the police to get a payment for her illegal detention in a psychiatric hospital. After 2 years and 4 trials, the judge awarded her $10,000, but the woman never saw the money. Continuing the search and not losing hope, Kristen Collins got a meeting with the killer the day before his execution. At the end of September 1930, Gordon Northcott sent Kristen a telegram in which he admitted that he had lied about Walter being at his ranch at all. He promised to tell the truth if she came to him. But upon her arrival, he said he didn't want to see her and that he didn't know anything. Until the last day of his life, Gordon's main goal was to cause pain and suffering. On October 2, he was hanged. Kristen Collins spent the rest of her life looking for her son. She died alone in 1964 and was buried in Los Angeles. Sanford Clark, the killer's nephew, returned to Canada to his family, but suffered from self-hatred all his life. He got married and adopted 2 children. Sanford didn't want his children because he was afraid they would inherit Uncle Gordon's genes.